Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Moorhead Public Service Commission welcomes and encourages customer input on issues listed on the agenda or of general water electric utility interest, time and commission permitting. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations. Customers wishing to address the commission regarding a specific agenda item will be afforded an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Customers wishing to speak on matters not listed on the agenda will be given the opportunity to do so under the heading Customers to be Heard/recognitions. Each person requesting the opportunity to speak is asked to fill out a request to speak form located on the table in the back of the room and present it to the administrative assistant in attendance at the meeting. Any follow-up or feedback will be done by email on anything that cannot be resolved this evening. With that, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Moved by Ness, second by Lyseth. We don't have to do roll call. All right, let's go for all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. That's motion by Borgen, second by Ness. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. And customers to be heard.
No customers or recognitions this evening.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. And we'll go to old business. Any commissioners have any old business? Does not look like it. So we'll move to City Council report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Over the last month, the major issue with the City Council has been mosquitoes. So it has been quite an interesting discussion. We voted 2 weeks ago to pause on aerial spraying due to the pollinators, and we had so many people saying they didn't want to be sprayed with toxic chemicals. And you can't opt out of aerial spraying. So we paused for 2 weeks, and during that 2-week period, we had a workshop to talk more about it, to review our policy, and we were inundated with additional emails from our constituents who really did want us to spray. So it all came to a head last night. We voted again, and we are going to be aerial spraying pursuant to the policy that has been in place for the last several years. So our policy has always been that we do not use the same concentration of chemical as Fargo and West Fargo does. And so I'm not sure when or if aerial spraying will occur again. Frankly, based on the data that we were presented, the aerial spraying that happened in Fargo and West Fargo really didn't help with the mosquito. It's just a wet year and we got lots of mosquitoes. So that was really the biggest thing for the City Council. So I will say another issue that we need to continue to work towards as a Public Service Finance Commission is to come to a conclusion on our financial contribution to the new City Hall and our place there. We've had a couple of meetings on that, and I'm hoping that we can come to our decision sooner rather than later. The Laurel Board, which is the Lake Agassiz Regional Library, we're kind of having the same issues that we were having, and they have come to an agreement, so they will be in the library, which is good. And now we just have to get Moorhead Public Service to make a decision in regard to our financial contribution to our new place in the City Hall. So that's my report. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll move to Public Service Commission reports. Any commissioners have anything to report? Okay. And we'll move to General Manager. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, so there's a plethora of items within the general manager's report tonight. Most of those I'll let you guys review and look at your leisure if you haven't already. Again, we're going over our second quarter strategic plan updates. I'll leave the updates alone and we'll just kind of hit the dashboards. and then we'll go from there with a couple other items. Again, strategic planning matrix, you'll see that in your packet. Again, it shows items that are complete or in process, ongoing, and gathering information or not started. So overall, we've got several items completed already. A lot of the items usually take the full year to complete as well, so you'll see some of those coming off over the next 2 quarters. And then we got one item that we are pausing until 2026 as well on that. Again, overall, from the dashboard's perspective, again, this is April through June. Purchase power and energy was consistent with what we expected. Some was up, some was down. Again, it's just all weather related. From an outage perspective, we had 13 outages over that quarter, which was really good. We had a bunch of rebates in the second quarter as well, about almost $37,000 in rebates for our Brighter Energy Solutions program, which MRES also supports us with. From a financial perspective, on the electric side, just true operations, operating revenues and expenses, those were very close to budget, a little bit under on both of them. From the expenses were over, the operating revenues were under, but we did have some increased revenue or projected revenue from our investments as well too. And we don't take any of those because we usually take them to term, but we have to show those on our income statements as well too. On the water side, their revenues were up during the first quarter, their operation expenses were down, and again, the investments were contributed to that overall net position as well too. So overall, we did fairly good for the second quarter. Mark's already told me that the water had a little bit of struggles in July, but again, it was wet. So other than that, on our dashboards, we did have a couple of OSHA reportables, which we don't like to see, but they did occur. We've also got our IT dashboards and records management and GIS in there as well too, and then our overall social media. I would say on the water side, we're seeing hardness levels that are somewhat consistent with last year, maybe a little different. And you can tell that we've our cost per million gallons of treated, our chemical cost for million gallons treated was less over the first 2 months of the quarter, but very similar to last year as well. So just keep an eye on that. Other than that, Missouri River Energy Services submitted an application to work on constructing a 145 megawatt combustion turbine generator down in Toronto. So they're working on that, and Terry Wolf is here tonight. He might talk about that a little bit. And then we got a bunch of thank yous and attendances. So we got a thank you from the Moorhead Legacy Foundation and our recipient for the scholarship we had with that student. He's actually got $2,500 and is attending Harvard. We got a thank you from them. We got a thank you for the longest table as well too, and then a bunch of items that we were attending over the years. So Safe City Nights, River Arts, the Moorhead Business Association Expo, and I think I'm missing one, but that should be all my report for the night.
Excellent. And if you don't know, our recipient of the scholarship, Janu Lee, he also was a valedictorian this year from Moorhead High. Very impressive student, and it's going to be exciting to see where he goes. So, excellent. So I'll look for a motion to approve the general manager's report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Lysa, second from Borgen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right.
I do have one question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Travis, on the enterprise risk identified by the vendor, the 230 unresolved risks, what does that include? Is that like, are we getting a score? It seems like we're getting a score from someone. We're doing better than the industry benchmark, it looks like. But then we have these unresolved risks. Do you know what those are?
Yes, I've asked that question and I don't remember it off the top of my head, but
Is it cybersecurity, basically?
basically it's looking at cybersecurity, but there's some things it's looking at that we can't physically change. So I don't think it's really true to that, but I can get you some more information on that from Kurt. Kurt unfortunately couldn't be here tonight.
That's
so-
okay. Yeah, that would be great. Just a little explanation, because it looks like a big number, and I just thought, what is that? I'm
Yep.
sure he's on it, but it would be kind of nice to know.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll move forward to 8D, accept the report on regional electric rates.
Yeah, so this is, a annual item that we provide to the commission, just looking at regional electric rates within the Fargo-Moorhead area. Looks at XL, North Dakota, Minnesota rates, along with Cass County Electric and Red River Valley Co-op. And so I've got Adam Benthart, he's our construction manager. He'll be providing our update. It's looking at what 2025 looked at, and then we do have some information on projected rate increases for some of the other utilities, so we did do some comparisons with that. So I'll let Adam speak to everything. Go ahead, Adam.
Adam Bender, construction manager. First, I'll apologize. I threw a lot of graphs at you guys this year, so I'll kind of explain what you're going to be looking at. So this is the 2025 regional electric rates to show our current 2025 electric rates compared to our electric utilities in our area. We did include one additional utility on our commercial side this year that has not been included in the past. They were on the residential, but not on the commercial. The rate structures vary greatly between all the utilities. MPS is very upfront with their rates. We fit everything on a nice brochure, and what you see on there is what you're going to pay. Other utilities, they're hundreds of pages long with surcharges and everything buried in there that we got to dig around. So we take all of that and we simplify it into a monthly average usage for those 4 rate classes, and then we calculate that to show an average dollar per month for each one of those classes to show our regional competitiveness. So the first 4 graphs there are our current 2025 analysis to show where we fall against these other local utilities. And as you can see, we are the lowest rate in all 4 classes when you compare against the board. And those are the 4 graphs that say current and interim rates on the top. As Travis said, this year we had the opportunity to provide some 2026 numbers to look ahead. Some of these utilities are currently under interim increases, and their proposals are sitting within their respective PUCs to be approved for 2026. So we took MPS's proposed 2% that we're looking at, and so we can see where we're going to fall for 2026 if we follow through with that 2% versus what we already know is coming for a couple of those other utilities. And you can see that even with that 2%, we're still the lowest across the board. So that is our 2025 regional electric rates. Are there any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you. I think
I do too. Thank you. They're good.
the graphs are great. And did you mention this goes out to the ratepayers, right, or not, in the annual report? Or I thought we had that in there before, but maybe not.
I think we might have had it in the annual management report. I think those graphs are in there.
I believe so. Yep.
I mean, it certainly shows the power of nonprofit public utility and what we provide to the ratepayers in the Moorhead.
Yep. And then we'll use these to calculate those surcharges here in another couple months. I'll be back with those. And
Sure.
so we use these numbers to calculate those surcharges
For the service territory.
for the service territories we bought out.
Yep. Sure. Gotcha. All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Do we need to accept that report, Travis?
John?
Yes. Okay. Look for a motion to accept the report on regional electric rates.
Second.
All right. Motion from Ness, second from Baker. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We'll move to item 8C, accept the report on reserve capacity agreements with MRES and transmission for potential large load customers. And I believe we have Mr. Wolf here.
Yeah, so we've got Terry Wolf. He's the Chief Operating Officer for Missouri River Energy Services. I've asked Terry, we've been working over the last few months trying to kind of lock in 2 items, reserve capacity agreement. So, you know, we've been talking about and will be talking about the Northeast substation later this evening. Part of that is to look at potentially building another generation facility similar to the one we have by the hockey arena in Moorhead as well too, for a secondary site for that. And Terry's going to talk about that, along with talking about transmission planning and system capacity as well for Moorhead, and overall timelines and what it takes for just normal projects along with large load requests projects as well too. So with that, Terry, thank you for coming up. I'll let you go ahead and give your PowerPoint presentation.
All right, so Lisa, you're going to pull it up for me? Is that right?
Yeah, they just
Okay,
pulled it.
very good, thank you. Before I get started, I'll prominently display my, my mug that I use. If you can't read it, it's an SDSU mug, so I attended the school to the south. So hopefully you don't take that against me as you listen to me this evening. But again, thanks for the introduction, Travis. Again, Terry Wolf. I've been with Missouri River for 25 years, and I oversee our market operations, so engagement in the markets. I oversee a distribution maintenance group that we also have, and then I oversee generation, which you're going to hear about this evening, and then finally transmission. So the presentation I'm going to give today is going to include really two major topics. One is talking about the Reserve Capacity Agreement, or RCA, as we use for acronym in our shop. And then the other item I'm going to chat about is the transmission for large loads. So really two separate presentations kind of merged together. I will pause in between certainly to allow for questions on the different topics. And I'm going to struggle seeing that. I should have worn my glasses. I'll try to paper through, so I apologize. You're fine. I've got mine. I've got mine here. So the first thing I wanted to chat about is really just provide a little bit of background on why do we think about reserve capacity? Why do we have reserve capacity agreements with our members? Well, each of the regional transmission organizations, or RTOs, that we engage with, MISO and SPP, they both have their own requirements that we have to satisfy to meet our objectives for resource adequacy. Again, to ensure the grid is reliable. This takes into account retirements, increased demand, intermittency of resources that are prominent in the industry now. And then also you need to think about what I'll call difficulty in installing generation due to the backlog in the interconnection queue. And probably the most significant one that I think about today is the changes in the rules. You'll hear me mention this a couple times. The changes in the rules within those RTOs related to how you value different resources. So you have to really think about not only the resource type, but how those resources are valued. And it's based on really availability and their ability to produce when needed most. So next graph here, this is again a little complicated, but at a high level, what this is trying to show is that in the years 26, 27, 28, the region, the Southwest Power Pool region, which is the region that Moorhead is in, the footprint that Moorhead is in that 27, 28 timeframe, without additions to the grid, it looks like there are starting to be deficiencies from what the region has identified as the need. So again, long term, it looks like 27, 28, it looks like there is starting to be a gap. Now that's if additional resources are not installed. We expect that there will be some installed, but you never know how things are going to play out in time. So again, long term, it looks like there's starting to be a gap, and certainly we have to meet these obligations on our own, independent of what the region's doing. And that's really what this graph is trying to demonstrate, is that, long term, we feel like we're pretty good from a resource adequacy perspective, but resources like what Moorhead is planning to investigate are valuable to us as we meet those changing resource needs and the differing value of the resources over time. And I'll also note probably one of the biggest unknowns that we have in this is the future of really all of our carbon-based resources, primarily Laramie River Station, which is a coal-fired plant in Wyoming that makes up a large component of our resource mix. If there are what I'll call material regulatory changes that require us to retire that for some reason, that creates a large gap for us. So again, that's that large red gap in the middle. So this takes into account the hydro allocations that our members have, Laramie River Station, our combustion turbines, our municipal generation, Watertown Power Plant, et cetera. All the above, it takes into account that. And you can see that things are pretty tight as we go forward. So large additions, large load additions, or retirements, either load increases or generation decreases impact that gap, if you will. So we need to think about that and try to meet those, plan for those things going forward. So why are we here? Why are we here to chat about this? Again, we've got, we've got needs, resource adequacy needs, and we really implemented or revised this program a few years ago to try to encourage municipals to add some local generation, some additional generation. And we did that using some really economic tools, and I'll get into those in just a little bit. But at a high level, we had a target of trying to get about 50 megawatts from MISO, the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, which is the RTO to the east, and Southwest Power Pool. So again, we were looking for members within those footprints to add local generation. One of the reasons we like the municipals to do it is really it's a win-win. It's a win for us, and it's a win for the locals. It's a win for us in that we feel like we can get these resources online more quickly than what we can on the regional. If we installed a regional resource because of the backlog in the generation queue. And then the other reason that it's a win is it provides for additional local reliability for the municipal. And I know that's always part of the value proposition that the municipals look at when they're trying to identify if they are interested in a resource like this. So what is the reserve capacity agreement? And this is, again, this agreement really was implemented in the early 2000s. Again, it's local distributed generation that the membership installs. It satisfies our needs and local reliability needs. Missouri River purchases all the output of those resources. The municipals own, operate, and maintain the unit. So again, it's a local asset that the municipal needs to maintain long term. We pay for fuel when it's operated. We pay for staffing when it's operated. In the 2022 timeframe, recognizing a need for this, we added a couple components to this. Number one, we increased the base rate. So we increased the base rate that we were paying for the installed generation. And then we also added another component for new generation called the lump sum payment. So in other words, we bumped up the base rate and we added an incentive to help encourage installation of generation with what we refer to as a lump sum payment. It's a large component to our resource mix. Just to put this in perspective, and you'll see this a little bit more in the next presentation on transmission, but the local generation that we have installed across our footprint is about 150 megawatts, so large block distributed amongst our membership. When you look at that relative to our total resources are about 1,100 megawatts. So this is roughly 15% of that total. So again, a large component of the overall resource mix. So again, cost sharing, we believe it's reasonable to do some cost sharing on that because there is some local value. We believe it's a low risk resource because the resource doesn't have to be online all the time. That's one thing. So in other words, in the era of intermittent resources, oftentimes there's an overabundance of energy. So it's not economic to run resources all the time. Even our coal plant is shut down for economic reasons often. But this resource can be readily available when needed most, the polar vortex events. So 2021, Moorhead had to run the generation for 4+ days. That's a great example of the value of these kinds of resources. And when you need it the most, it's available because you've got resources on site as in fuel on site and are able to refuel those over time. All right, one more slide and then I'm going to pause so you can get your questions in at that point. you know, some of the local requirements, and I'm sure Moorhead probably knows these better than I do because they're operating the resources, but we need the resources to be available within a 2-hour time period. So we generally have a heads up that things may be happening or there may be a need for these resources. So we try to give them a warning order, but generally the resources need to be available within 2 hours, and they need to be able to operate for extended periods. Again, that polar vortex was a great example of that. Operated for about 5 days for 24 hours a day at the maximum output. That's really the design characteristics that we look for in these. You don't have to have fuel on site for the 5 days, but you have to have it for at least 24 hours. I think it's 20 or 24 hours. So, and the ability to refuel. So you got to have arrangements with local suppliers to be able to get those things done. Again, engine maintenance is, again, the member's responsibility. And certainly we participate in observing the testing on an annual basis to ensure it's in compliance with what you're getting paid on an annual basis. And then we do call on it during the year just for testing to ensure it's available when we need it most. So again, I'll pause there and maybe I'll ask Travis real quick if he wants to fill in any gaps that I should have covered from the beginning and let him chime in, and then I'll try to answer any questions he might have or others.
Yeah, no, overall, again, what we're trying to do is educate the commission, because we're going to be coming back with a task order for professional services to work with an engineering firm to help us start planning for siting this. And really, we have to get those approvals. If I'm correct, it's not part of the current budget that was approved last year, because we just weren't sure where things were going with the MPCA. We've got some comfort level based on other members moving forward with these projects. So we're, with the timeline of the Northeast substation, we can still do this project and hopefully even have it operational at the same time the sub is completed as well too. So it's a great opportunity. The cost sharing or the purchasing of the power capacity from MRES does help offset that cost over a 10, 15-year period. Terry, am I correct with that?
Again, it's based on how you issue the debt, but yes,
Correct.
it's a payback over a period of time, yes.
So overall, it's you know, there's always some risk to having these on site. We've had the Centennial Generating Station since about 2011, and that's worked really well for us. Again, we've operated it once under requested conditions. Other than that, it's just for quarterly testing or quarterly check-ins is what we call that. So great opportunity, add some value for Moorhead. When we did have the polar vortex, one of the things that was brought up a lot was, why don't we have more of these? And you got that through some of the social media comments or questions that we were getting. Well, we can't put these at every substation. It's difficult to do that just because of the property and space and locations of them. Northeast is a good location to do that, and we could do potentially one other in town without having too much of a conflict. So I'll leave it at that and open it up to any questions from the commissioners.
Any questions? I'll ask Terry, is that 450 hours per year, is that permitting through the MPCA for air pollution, or is that something related to the SPP?
I'll answer like my old boss used to do all the time, yes. In other words, there's a number of things that we take into account. Currently, that is really our number that's derived. It's really that if you're thinking about the math and 8760, that's about 5% of the hours in a year. So we wouldn't anticipate these resources needing to operate more than that. Generally, the MPCA permitting allows for more than that 450. That's kind of our minimum. In other words, looking out into the future, that's the most that we can see that these resources would be needed in the future. Again, the most we saw in that 1 week was probably in the, I think that we approached 90 hours. It was in that neighborhood that week that the generation operated, so.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, so I'm really appreciative that I went on that tour with you, Travis, because we talked about this when we were at Centennial, and I didn't understand all of it until I was told by you and got to see it, and I'm really thankful because I get this conversation now. I probably wouldn't if I hadn't been there, so thank you. So my understanding is that there is a forecast that we are going to need more redundant resources if we have an event like the polar vortex again. And when is that? Maybe it was in the slideshow and I just missed it. Are you saying that we need this by 2027, 2028? Is because I saw that graph. Is that what you're saying?
The Missouri River graph of resource adequacy needs is not until, there is no immediate near-term need for Missouri River. We are trying to incent membership to install these locally because we're concerned about rule changes. We're concerned about load additions. It's really a planning initiative. In other words, planning for the uncertainty. And to be frank with you, we've offered this same program in the MISO footprint, and we have a greater need there, but we're trying to really be consistent, I'll say, across the membership and offering it to really all members. Again, we see it as a benefit for the members and us. So again, to summarize, I'd say we're anticipating a need. We don't have an immediate one. I don't know if that answers your question.
That's good, yep. And there wasn't anything in this slide deck about costs yet, was there? How much are we talking?
Yeah, expensive, no. Terry, I know you've had a couple members that have been doing these projects, and I don't remember off the top of my head what those costs were, but.
I don't have a good number for that. Again, it varies so much depending on how much generation you're putting in and the type of installation. I can tell you how much we pay. I can't tell you what they're costing. Again, that's really a decision that needs to be made internally based on your
I would say MRES, was it 70 to or 65 to 85% coverage is what usually MRES covers of that cost, and the remainder becomes the utilities cost to that as well.
Correct.
Too.
So we're, as I noted in the presentation, we're looking at least when we did these estimates and the rate determination, it was in that 70% range is what we were proposing to really compensate. So again, trying to recognize a local value as well as our value in that proposal. Mm-hmm. It's in the millions for sure. It's going to be north of 10.
Yeah, it's probably
north of 10
million.
million.
To 12, somewhere in there.
So in order for us to budget, we would have to know. Do we budget for some engineering first, the first couple of years, to figure out how much it's going to cost? I'm just kind of trying to understand how you budget for this before we even know what it's going to cost and when we need it, et cetera.
Mark Moylan has a 10-year forecast, so we can put that in the budget process that the budget committee, which will get approved, or working group will get approved tonight. They'll get to see all that and forecast it. We would bond for this and pay it over a 15 to 20 year period.
I just needed to have a better understanding of it.
And I'll add, these resources are not things you can install overnight. Yeah. If you embark on the engineering, you're probably lucky. If you embarked on the engineering tonight, you'd probably be lucky to have the gen installed in 3 to 4 years. It just takes that long with the demand for these resources out there. There's that long of a lead time.
I think it's 3 years right now is the lead time.
I was thinking about construction and all the study work and just those activities that add up for sure.
Very recently, today, there was a news article about this data center in Harwood, North Dakota. Are these data centers, because there's such a large draw of electricity, are they impacting the RTOs and the demand for reserve power?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Tremendous impact on the regional needs for these resources. And to be frank with you, those data centers are gobbling up a lot of the resources that we're talking about, a lot of those generation resources, new ones that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. They're consuming a tremendous amount of the manufacturing capacity to meet the needs of those types of facilities.
That's what I suspected. And after the news article this morning, I received a number of calls from people, wondering if it was going to affect their rates here in Moorhead. And that's a difficult question to answer because not directly, of course, but regionally, of course, it's impacting the transmission capabilities.
As at a high level, it'll cause upward pressure, absolutely. Not directly on us, but as you think about purchasing energy and capacity from the market, to the extent there's more demand, it's going to create those margins, it's going to be thinner and thinner. It makes it much more difficult to get low-cost energy. Now, that's our job. Our job as a regional utility to have resources that can provide energy, that mitigate the risk to those market swings. That's our role, regardless of what the data centers are doing. But that's our obligation to ensure we have those resources available. And that's why, if you're paying attention to all the regional news, you'll hear Palisades Nuclear Facility is restarting. Duane Arnold Nuclear Facility in Iowa. The Palisades is in Michigan. Duane Arnold's in Iowa. I read one today about a nuke plant restarting in Wisconsin. That's why you hear stories about coal plants postponing retirement, because that demand is so great, it's pushing the need for those resources to be extended and restarted.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think you can continue.
So again, I'll summarize real quickly on your question, Joel.
Oh, it's right here. You have a slide on it.
Yeah, well, I'm getting to that. I'll get to
Okay.
that. But to answer your question, a data center in Harwood is not going to directly impact Moorhead's rates. That's our job to mitigate those things.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. It's the intangibles that are out there
Yep.
at a regional level that are difficult to convey what that impact is going to be,
Correct.
for people. So
Correct.
Dan Molly, City Manager Molly, asked a question from one of the council members yesterday, and I provided a similar response back to Dan. Again, as a commission, as a utility, we got to figure out how to manage those large loads and not impact the other customers from a rate perspective. We have ways to do that. Again, that's going to require, a rate study in the near future on the electric side to have a large load customer rate so that it doesn't impact those other customers, because you're going to want to separate your WAPA allocation and keep that with, the normal city of Moorhead. The large load customer we're going to have to look at that from a different perspective as well. And that was one of the questions that was asked. But yes, there is also some concerns with the system and reliability. Again, the RTOs will need to, the utilities and the large loads will have to figure out those costs and hopefully try to avoid charging or causing that upward pressure on rates for existing customers.
That's one of the topics I'm going to chat about here in just a bit, is really the large loads. And see here, I think I got too far ahead when I was clicking blind here, so I'll try to, going the wrong way, sorry. All right, so again, second phase of the presentation here, talking about transmission planning and load additions as you're thinking about those things. So some of the main topics: the large load interconnection and service, timelines for doing that, costs. How do you allocate those costs? That was really the topic Travis was just chatting about, and some of the things that we do on a proactive basis to try to serve what I'll call load growth. This is just I'm going to go through a few of these front slides pretty quick. It's really just saying, hey, we're trying to pay attention to this. We're trying to be in front of this. We've been thinking about this. We're trying to do some work internally from a wholesale power perspective to think about how we would address these from a rate perspective. So we're doing some work internally to do that. As you think about large load impacts on the industry, just as Joel was noting, these things, they are uniquely impactful. They're large. They're having tremendous impacts on regional planning from a capacity perspective. They're having tremendous impacts on regional transmission organizations as you think about how to serve a growing load. Historically, utility industry load has been pretty flat for a number of years. With these large load additions coming online, from data centers to ag processing to cryptocurrency, those types of things, those energy uses have been climbing. They're forecasting some growth, some material growth, at least relative to the total, as compared to what it had been previously. One thing I'll try to emphasize here is that, these loads can dwarf the size of like load of the city of Moorhead. And when I say that, so city of Moorhead is 85 megawatts on a given day. These types of loads, these data center loads, are easily 300 megawatts and more. So 4x. So think about the electrical infrastructure you have in your community today and think about what it would take to serve those loads. Not only in the community, but external to the community from a transmission perspective and a resource perspective to serve those. Just trying to put that in perspective. And that's a 300 megawatt load. We're hearing data centers, and I don't know the one in Harwood that you're speaking to, but data centers can easily hit the 3 to 7 to 1. I saw one in the news the other day down in Louisiana, 1.5 gigawatts. So you're talking 20x the city of Moorhead when you start thinking about those things and the infrastructure needed to do them. It's hard to really fathom that. I was exchanging an email internally. I said, this has reminded me of a movie. Just talking about the dramatics of these things, it's just, they're so significant, or can be so significant. That's not necessarily what we're talking about today here, but just trying to put it in perspective as you think about those things relative to the industry. I'm going to skip that one, jump into the industry one. These data centers, the federal government is thinking about these from a national security perspective. It's hard to think about that from a local level, but some of these large loads, particularly data centers, they're thinking about them from a national security perspective. So they're going to find a way. They're going to find a way to get these things done. I'm hearing folks talking about siting these near military bases so that they have access to land, they have security, they have, permitting certainty, or more permitting certainty, I'll say. Again, there's a lot of momentum behind some of those larger things. Again, that's not necessarily what we're talking about today, but just trying to keep it real for the group here. And, certainly I probably should have acknowledged this earlier. Earlier this year, we had some discussions with some of the economic development folks from Moorhead about a sustainable aviation fuels opportunity, and we've had a number of conversations with them about it. So it's important to think that this isn't just a data center that we're talking about from this perspective. And I'll also mention, data centers or cryptocurrency relative to a data center are two different things. Cryptocurrency, I think of as comes in a box and can leave in a box. They can move in a hurry. Data centers have a tremendous amount of infrastructure, building, wiring, likely generation to serve them depending on their in-service date requests. Similarly, sustainable aviation fuels will have infrastructure with them. So you need to think about the types of the customer that they are and the anticipated longevity of them, their ability to shut down in a hurry. In other words, based on the investment, are they going to leave town tomorrow? So you have to think about those things when you're looking at establishing rates. And that's one of the things Travis was alluding to at the beginning of this. Some of the big things that, that need to be thought about, at least from the electric side. Certainly there's a number of things from the municipal side that need to think about: water, wastewater, transportation, noise. Those things are really important on a local perspective. Things we think about are power supply, generation resources, transmission, and distribution. Those are really the things I'm going to focus on today. And none of these things, given we're in an interconnected world, none of these things are done in a vacuum. They have to be done in close coordination, close collaboration with neighbors. Very important that be done. So again, talking about the resources, I alluded to this earlier. I said, Missouri River has about 1,100 megawatts. When you think about the resources the members have in their preference power hydro allocations, along with the resources we have, it's about 1,100 megawatts. So just putting that in perspective, a little over 1 gigawatt. And again, I alluded to a data center in Louisiana being 1,500 gigawatts in a single, I shouldn't say behind a single meter, but generally within a single footprint. So just tremendous size loads. And again, The one Moorhead was discussing relative to the sustainable aviation fuels was in the 300 megawatt range. So again, significant addition, potential there. So on the power supply side, we do on an annual basis, and Travis gets to participate in this at our strategic planning events. We do integrated resource plans to look at how do we meet our member needs today and how do we meet them going forward for a reasonable future. I think this year we looked out to the 2043 timeframe. So we look at those things. We look at customer size, what our member forecasts are going out. As we think about these needs, these large loads, you've got to really start to think about the uniqueness of those individual customers. So you got to think about their ability to leave, like I was alluding to. You got to think about the type of load shape that they're going to have over time, which ties into the energy supply side that's needed. Are they large energy users? Do they have local generation? How are they intending to perhaps operate that local generation? And certainly pricing is material to these folks. It's not a must take at any price. They're sensitive at times too, so you need to think about those things. As those kinds of loads come in, we would likely develop a unique wholesale rate for that kind of a customer. Again, they're so significant, so impactful, not only from your perspective, but also from ours, that we would look at developing a supplemental, a unique rate for that type of customer. And that's really what Travis was alluding to. Again, you'd have to think about those things. You'd have to, be very thoughtful about how those things were presented to them, because you have to worry about, stranded assets and a customer walking away. And I'll get into some other conversations here in just a bit about how to structure those rates. But on the transmission side, there's a number of roles that we need to be concerned about. Certainly, we're thinking about this from a municipal supplier perspective, a Missouri River, the wholesale supplier perspective, and how we interact in the transmission world. We need to be concerned about the regional transmission organizations. They oversee the transmission grid that serves Moorhead and serves the neighboring utilities as well. We have to be concerned with neighboring transmission owners. Western Area Power Administration owns your source in Fargo and owns the source at the DOE sub, going in and out of the DOE sub on the south side of town. So we have to think about them. We have to think about Xcel Energy when we're engaging on these types of studies. And then you have to be concerned about operations, certainly, and who's going to operate these facilities. Missouri River does not govern what the rules are when these things are done. These are federal rules that are governed by the RTO, the Regional Transmission Organization tariffs, and there's required planning processes that we have to work through to satisfy their requirements. So this is at a high level of the planning process. First step is always studies. That's what we alluded to with the generation. That's a few months to really develop the study inputs, and then to actually complete that coordination with the RTOs, regional transmission organizations, the transmission operators, the transmission owners. That takes 9 to 12 months just to do that coordination, that collaboration. Depending on what facilities are identified on the need, now we're talking the large loads now, depending on what facilities are needed, that can take another 3 to 7 years when you think about the permitting, the regulatory, the routing, the procurement, the construction, and ultimately commissioning. So again, 1 to 3 months in getting the study inputs, 9 to 12 doing the study in collaboration with others, and then depending on the upgrades, it's 3 to 7 years. And we've seen that play out. We're engaged in a couple large transmission projects, and We'll be lucky to get that project within probably 9 years from when the RTO started that effort. It just takes that long. Again, it depends on the magnitude of those things, but 3 to 7 years on the actual construction, permitting, engineering, all that. So some of the cost categories that that you need to think about, again, you need to be concerned with the type, the power factor, how much energy they're going to consume on a daily basis. You need to, then a lot of those costs, you may want to create a direct assigned cost. You may want to create unique rates to directly assign those costs. And that's for both transmission, distribution, and power supply, really all three of those categories you need to think about. Certainly, you've probably dealt with this in unique industrial customers where you've assigned dedicated facility costs to individual customers, and that's really what we're talking about for these large customers as well. Because there is material risk in those customers affecting your existing customers and potentially going away and letting the existing customers hold the bag or left holding the bag. Some of the proactive steps we've done, certainly on an annual basis, we engage with Moorhead and request feedback on any facility changes they've got locally that they need or are planning. We're continually working to try to understand what margin is available in the transmission system on an individual member basis. And we look to try to forecast out based on normal load growth, not large load growth, because we can't, one thing I'll emphasize here just for a bit is we're not allowed, based on regulatory standards, to implement large load additions on a speculative basis into the transmission models. That is not accepted. It would be a violation of the planning standards. We can include what I'll call expected load growth that we can support. We cannot build on speculation. We can't plan on speculation. And that's because when you think about it, the transmission system is paid for by all customers of the transmission system. So similar to the neighbors not wanting to pay for our speculation, we don't want to pay for their speculation. So you really pay for the infrastructure that is needed and known. That's really ultimately our obligation to adhere to those things long term. Certainly communication is key to this, and we've had communication with Travis and others as these things have popped up. I'm gonna maybe pause, and I'll hit maybe the last couple slides here quick, and then so just about done, so a couple more slides. This one is really just kind of covering what your system is, at least from the transmission perspective. On the far left, there is identifying the WAPA Fargo substation. And on the far right is the Moorhead DOE substation, which really is connected by the Western Area Power Administration WAPA 230 kV transmission line that traverses Fargo to Moorhead. And then Moorhead has its transmission loop within the community. So again, you got your two primary sources on the east and the west, or west and the south, if you will. And the strongest source by far is the Fargo source. If you think about the Fargo source being out of service, the next strongest source is coming out of Morris, Minnesota. That's quite a distance. And I know very recently there were some operational issues that made folks a little nervous internally here. Hopefully, I don't think it made it out to the public or any concerns there, but that Fargo source was out, and it puts the city at risk when the Fargo source is out of service. They were doing some normal maintenance. It's just part of planning and operations. But the Fargo source is by far the strongest, and the Moorhead DOE one is not as strong because of the distance to the next sources. This is a slide that we put together actually some time ago to really do some proactive planning to talk about what Moorhead can do to add load and what they can think about to maybe fund some increments or how we meet the next increments of load additions within the city. So as you look at this, as you scan down the list, on the very bottom, the largest one is 44 megawatts. And that's after some material dollars are spent, into the teens of millions. This isn't to serve 300 megawatts of load. If we were going to serve 300 megawatts of load, it would be some material transmission additions. I've outlined the WAPA transmission line east and west, or west and south of town. Those facilities are not adequate to meet the needs of a 300 megawatt load addition. If that type of load proceeds, we would likely have to tie into physically or electrically connect to another source in the area. Likely what's known as the Alexandria to Bison substation that is south of town about 20 miles and would require a substantial transmission line into the community to do that. That's not a trivial task. Again, 20 plus miles of a 345 kV transmission line is a multi-year process to construct, to permit, design, do all those things and construct it ultimately. And an added complication, Moorhead is blessed, say this very sarcastically, Moorhead is blessed with being on the edge of the MISO RTU, MISO SPP seam. Much like you're on the border of North Dakota, Minnesota, you're on the seam of the RTOs as well. So it makes it difficult to do planning on the edges of those seams. Certainly we work through it, but it adds another layer of complexity to it. Last slide here, and probably all happy I'm saying that. Last slide. We look at these things on an annual basis. We coordinate with Travis and Taylor and the folks internally here about these things, and we have a path, if you will, to add what I'll call normal load growth, and that's outlined in here. And Moorhead's made some good steps at the DOE sub to address some regional needs that also add some margin to the city of Moorhead. Again, those things take time, I think, from probably word go, and those are issues just confined in that substation. We're probably on 5 years just to do those things. The last point I'll make is to really justify regional build out for load additions. We have to go through a process where the RTOs and the neighboring TOs get to view and really dissect our plans, and they get feedback, they get input, because again, they're paying. So there must be a need demonstrated for us to really propose any new facilities and changes. For example, I know Moorhead's looking at rebuilding some of their existing lines that were built in the 70s, and we have to go through a planning process to justify that. So, those are on the approaching 45 plus years old, 50 years old. We have to go through a planning process to support those. Again, it makes good sense because other folks are paying. And I'll pause there, and I'll give Travis the first bite at the apple, maybe, if he wants to ask for me to clarify anything or comment on anything else.
No, I think again, I appreciate it, Terry. Again, you talked about large load. We talked about normal growth within the city of Moorhead, and those are two different perspectives that we got to look at everything on. Again, the seams was a great thing to add in. I understand it, but getting the commissioners to understand the borders that we unfortunately sit on a double axis level, I guess. So, no, overall, we're already starting. We actually, I think last week had a meeting with some of the MRES staff talking about the replacement of the KV1A transformer that's in the DOE sub, and some of you got to see that when we did our facilities tours this summer. It's the one piece that really adds some additional capacity. But again, we're looking at ages of transformers and things like that to try to get the useful life of what we got, but at the same time, know that we have a need for capacity, and Northeast sub is also being worked on, so kind of got to schedule these projects out over the next 5 to 10 years roughly it's going to take. So especially with the lead times of transformers, those are roughly, I think, 3 years if I'm correct. So with that, I'll let the commissioners kind of ask some more questions if they got any.
More questions? I have one quick one. Where does, large-scale distributed generation come into play on this? Is that still being discussed as a realistic, feasible option? You talk about 300, 500 megawatt data centers. That's big enough you could build your own power generation facility at those locations, right?
And people are installing generation at those sites. That's what those, like data centers, for example, are installing municipal-like diesel generators at those sites. I think there was a proposal in Minnesota to install, 50 municipal generators, if you will, at that site. I mean, it was tens of generators. And I think the Utility Commission got a little excited about that and wanted to weigh in. It's very common for these data centers to go out and procure their own resources because, very frankly, if we have to, Missouri River, we're going to charge them for it anyway. So in many respects, it almost is in their interest to go out and do it. Now, they have to deal with backup energy, which is part of the realm we have to still get engaged in. So a lot of times they install that from a local perspective to meet their capacity needs, but there's still an obligation to coordinate with the municipals or the interconnected utilities for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions for Terry? Well, I just want to say thanks for coming up and spending time with us. We really appreciate everything that MRES does for us, and this was very enlightening. We're glad we're partnered with you to take care of some of these complex issues and keep a watch out, and we really appreciate that long-term partnership. So thank you.
And we do as well. We do as well, very much so. Thank you. And I'll take my SDSU mug with me anyway. Thank you.
I think NDSU has a few left over from the first day of school if you want to pick one up on your way back. So, all right. Can I get a motion to accept the report on reserve capacity agreements with MRES and transmission for potential large load customers?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Got a motion from Lysa, second from Borgen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we'll move to 8F. Accept report on potential use of lime sludge in roadway construction. I'm really excited to hear this one, Mark.
Yeah, so last meeting, Mark did do a brief update. We had a conversation probably the week before our last meeting with some good news. So we did a verbal update at that point, but Mark wanted to give a little bit more detail and some slides or information on it. So I'll let Mark go ahead and speak to that. This is a continuing opportunity, but it's going to take a little time to get there yet. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Manager. So as Travis had mentioned at our last meeting in July on the 15th, we did have just a brief verbal update regarding the potential use for lime in subgrade projects in the state of Minnesota. And we finally got our hands on some information, some charts we wanted to show the commissioners based off of the receiving of that confirmation of proof of concept here from July 2025. So a quick background, how did we get to where we are? So back in 2016, MPS staff started looking at more of a circular economy for lime sludge instead of having it indefinitely stored as a potential beneficial use in ponds. We ended up building our dewatering facility in 2021 and fired that up, and it's been in service ever since. And in 2022, we found an opportunity with Minnesota DOT to investigate subgrade materials as a primary driver for reusing our material in a circular economy. So fast forward about 3.5 years of study later, we were able to incorporate resources from Michigan State University as well as Texas A&M University in their geomaterial stabilization laboratories. And basically what they were looking at was how to incorporate this material in addition to the existing stratified materials that are used in subgrade. So what we had boiled down our scope down to was to evaluate potential lime sludge as a co-additive, not so much as a full out and out replacement, but a co-additive to traditional stabilizers for improving subgrade properties, durability, and then promoting again that circular reuse economy. And when we talked the first time about this in July, we didn't have the graphs, we didn't have the data behind us. The attachments that the commission has in the packet does have some of those summary recommendations that we had received at that time. So first and foremost, we did find that cement mixed with a certain percentage of our lime materials does have beneficial use in lime or in road subgrade projects. We did not see any, quote, noticeable negative impact on engineered performance. We did also see that it helps reduce plasticity in the soils, especially for that loamy, very fine-grained clay that we have in the Red River Valley, specifically in Clay County. And we did also see that when used with a cement base, we did see overall improved performance in certain durability tests that we have for unconfined compression strength tests. Basically, they put this stuff in a mix, they put it in a vise, and they squeeze it till it breaks. So that was one of the main graphs that we wanted to show the commission this afternoon. And the first of the 2 pages shows the cement-based stabilization 8C4S, showed that we had reduced volumetric change. Basically, it didn't compress and retain that molding as the pressure was induced from a vertical perspective. We did see that it had greater damage compared to the existing geomaterials that the MnDOT folks use in the roadways. So they want to essentially use our base information as a springboard into 2026. They're looking at doing some field testing and some pilot studies to see in real time what percent of our lime materials can be full out and out substituted with the cement mixture to be used in roadway construction projects. So that's a really exciting piece from our perspective. It does mean that we have at least several more years of study ahead of us, but this is by far one of the most complicated hurdles to get over, is seeing this proof of concept. So we wanted to show those graphs for the commission, and next steps are really going to be focusing on the freeze-thaw cycle and the wet-dry oscillations that we see that's typical for places in the upper Midwest. They're called coupled durability screening tests. That's going to be what the majority of 2026 and onward focuses on. But again, this is but the first step. We still have a lot of study to go, but based off of the initial lab tests, we're going to be able to put some of this into some field tests here in 2026.
That's great, Mark. Great to hear. Has there been discussion with North Dakota DOT, or is this primarily focused on Minnesota DOT?
Good question. So right now it's limited to Minnesota DOT. Right now, North Dakota DOT doesn't really have any interest in using this type of material because of the water plants in Jamestown and Bismarck already making this same material. Mm-hmm. So they're finding that instead of roadway construction, that landfill daily cap covers and then subgrade leachate control ponds is where they prefer to use this material, and that's also an option that we're actively pursuing.
Fair. Questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Look for a motion to accept the report on the use of lime sludge in roadway construction.
Second.
A motion from Ness, second from Borgen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 8G, accept report on MPS Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project.
Microphones. Yeah, so we'll have Jake Long. Again, like I said earlier, Kurt McLean couldn't be here tonight, so Jake's gonna step in, and as Kurt and Jake are both kind of dual project managers for the AMI project. Give you an update of where we're at. Basically, we're at the point where we're ready to start deployment. Jake's gonna speak to what we've been doing since our last update, which has been several months. So go ahead, Jake.
Yep, thank you, Travis. As Travis mentioned, this item tonight is to provide another update on MPS's Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project. The last update that we provided to the commission was in March, and at that time, MPS was in the early phase of installing meters in our system acceptance test area. MPS has since completed that initial phase of electric and water meters in the system acceptance test area, except for a limited number of counts due to scheduling or other operational issues. Overall, that initial phase included approximately 2,000 electric meters and 1,000 water meters. And, you know, overall it went fairly well. We did come up with some challenges with some operational, internal plumbing, and probably our largest challenge was what we expected, but customers scheduling their appointments for the water meter replacements. So currently, over the past couple months, several back-end IT-related systems have been completed and tested, as well as various sections of our system acceptance test document. MPS and our consultant on the project, Containment Technologies, we've been working through that system acceptance test document, and most of the functional and performance requirements within that document have been approved. However, MPS, we're actively working with Wesco and Honeywell to complete the remaining items before we sign off and approve the final system acceptance test. Where we're at now is beginning on September 8th, we'll transition into the next phase of electric and meter deployments, as additional meter exchanges are required to complete our system acceptance test. Also included in our agenda is the same information we included last report, just showing our communication plan to customers throughout the project. As I mentioned, this was included as in last report, but thought we'd also include it in tonight's, as the communication with and the customer assistance is critical to the success of this project. So with that, I will take any questions. So for that system acceptance test, there's about 2,000 electric and 1,000 water. And we have been installing a few in some other areas as just to test out some other parts of the project. But we're right around that number right now until we begin again next week or 2 weeks from now.
So we'll now start finishing off the roughly 35,000 electric and water meters that will have to be replaced before the project's complete. So
I know there was a customer in here a few meetings ago, of course. Was that just kind of a one-off? I mean, if we did 1,000 of these meters and really only ran into, one kind of hiccup or two, is that what you're seeing, or?
Yeah, we're seeing some internal plumbing, just aged materials, aged internal plumbing. Things get corroded and need to be replaced, and that's what we've seen most of our issues being. It's just aged internal plumbing, really, what comes of it. And we have our policy on non-operational equipment for that we brought to the commission probably a year ago at least. We've used that on if a valve gets stuck, we will hire a plumber to replace that, but it's got to be within the scope of the meter replacement. Outside of that, we got to take care of on a case by case.
Sure.
yeah, I think when we had that customer, and I think one of the lessons learned is we got to let it go through the repair and insurance process before we really take any action, just to make sure that it's not a MPS issue. It's more of we've seen a lot of the premise plumbing being more of the problem than actually the utility side of it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of these, the valves that you're using haven't probably been operated in years, if ever, in some of these homes, but they are the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain and as part of our service. So, yeah, I think as we move out of the area we are now, we should see less of those, but, yeah.
one thing to note too, is Jake and Kurt and Mark Moreland and I met this morning, talking a little bit about it. So there's probably another policy that's going to be coming forward to the commission, trying to deal with some of the RF questions and concerns on that as well too. But I think we found a really good avenue to approach that, which I think most customers should be comfortable with.
Great. Good job, Jake.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. All right, look for a motion to accept the report on MPS Advanced Metering Infrastructure Project.
Motion to accept report?
Motion from Liza, second from Ness. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Move to item number 10, approve the task order number 3 with MBN Engineering for MPS's 115 kilovolt transmission line upgrade project from Fargo Substation to Cheyenne Diversion.
Yeah, so I got Taylor Holt, project engineer, up tonight. So typically we put this on consent, but again, we wanted to communicate this with you a little bit just because of the situation we've been dealing with. We've got, a majority of this is related to the FM diversion line upgrades or relocation because of the channel. We also had some betterment pieces that were part of the initial agreement. That's been the struggle, and the costs have seemed to be a lot higher than we had anticipated. So we've decided to pull that piece back in-house. We're going to take over the betterment portion from the West Fargo WAPA substation to the Cheyenne diversion, or just a little bit outside of that diversion. So I'll let Taylor kind of speak to the rest of it, but overall this is just basically to start the engineering services portion of that to put everything together so we can go out for bid for fixing that, or for finalizing that piece of transmission line.
Good evening, Commission. Taylor Holt, project engineer. What you might have gotten from Travis's quick description is it's been a fairly complex situation that's led us to this point. But I'll do the best I can to keep it clear and concise. Essentially, like you may have noticed on Terry's previous presentation, we have a transmission line that ties our city to WAPA's West Fargo substation, which is located just to the west of the currently under construction FM diversion project. So we were approached when that project was in the planning stages to be able to span that crossing with our existing transmission line as a result of some upgrades to prevent any sort of blockage on the channel in the future during operational times. So we were essentially given the option of either performing the planning and construction ourselves or have the FM diversion project do it. Knowing that there's going to be a lot of regulations and a lot of extra paperwork that has to be filed for the diversion project, we elected to be as hands-off as we can and then just provide review and also have a third-party review any of the designs throughout the project and design process, because we don't have any structural engineers on staff. So we agreed to a memorandum of understanding, and there's been a little bit of a conflicting interpretation on what that scope was initially. So the construction team that's been working on it was only looking within the boundaries of the diversion channel. But MPS also has some additional poles outside of it that we were looking at upgrading at the same time, which we now refer to as the Betterment Project. That transmission line has reached a point where we need to upgrade the capacity, as you guys just learned about 15 minutes ago. So we're trying to sort of hit two birds with one stone on that project. We had an agenda item, I think it was December of last year, to hire MBN to do well, it was actually hire ASN constructors to hire MBN engineering to design those additional upgrades. Everything's been going fine with that, but we've reached the point where we need to actually perform the construction and order the materials, and we haven't been able to reach an agreement on the proper amount of compensation for that second agreement. So we decided to take that materials ordering and hire a construction contractor in-house. So this task order is with MBN Engineering, and we're gonna work with them to develop the bid specifications, because we don't do transmission line upgrade projects with large contractors like this very often. So they're gonna provide those services to us, and we are planning, assuming that this is approved tonight, to take those bids specifications to you guys for approval at next month's meeting, and then we can hopefully save some some money throughout that project on the contractor and get it scheduled to perform within the next year. Well, that was sort of a long story. At this point, are there any questions?
I guess I have a question, and I should probably know this, but why wasn't all this just included in the procurement documents at the start and have it be ASN's responsibility and have it priced out during bidding phase?
That's where the conflicting interpretation was. This was kind of preceding my role as the project engineer, so I got to read the documents after the fact. But I know several meetings in the electric division with Travis, it was clear and understood that ASN was going to be providing designs to upgrade that entire stretch of line. When I got to the review process of the design materials, that was when I noticed that nothing went outside the diversion channel. So I started asking questions. We decided to change things after that. And my reading of the MOU did not cover a scope really whatsoever. So it really left that gray area, in my opinion, to allow for differing interpretations on what's required by ASN at that point in time.
And is that MOU between MPS and the Diversion Authority?
It's been a while. I think it was, but
Yeah.
ASN was tied to it.
They would have been required to follow it.
Yeah, I think it was the Diversion Authority.
Okay. Thank you.
Travis, do you have a differing recollection of that MOU?
Witten. Oh, I think it was with the Diversion Authority,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's been a while since we've read that, so.
Yeah, it was a much smaller agreement than a lot of these other ones I've been looking at recently. So it didn't cover a lot of topics. So it's not really surprising that there wasn't an extensive scope of services listed in it.
Yeah, that's frustrating, I'm sure. This has been going on for quite some time, and I think the only way to get resolution is to take the matter into our own hands. So I appreciate you bringing this forward to the meeting. So,
Thank you.
go ahead, John. What exactly is an uplift charge, John? Yeah, that's what I would figure.
It was basically a management of the construction. I think we were dealing with, what, 3 structures of line that we had to upgrade, and 2, or maybe it was more than that.
It was the installation of 2
Structures.
2-pole structures, and then upsizing wire from WAPA's substation to structure 7. So a total of, that make it 6 spans, and then 1 more span to the east of the diversion. And that uplift charge consisted of several items, such as time for project management with the construction contractor, inspection, but it also included profit, overhead costs, administrative costs. But when I ran the numbers based off of our most expensive engineering consultant, I couldn't get anywhere near the ballpark of what they were requesting based off of the time being quoted.
Yeah, this appears to be the cheapest option at this point, I would say. I mean, we don't have certainty, of course, because you'll have to bid out
Yes.
materials and construction, but
Right. What we sort of run a risk of right now is that the construction contractor might come in much higher than the one that ASN would have been hiring, which was all a part of that efficiency goal of having them do it in the first place. We would have sort of potentially dodged a mobilization cost, and those aren't cheap at this point in time. But we do also have a large buffer that we would have to make up based on the costs being proposed in this task order compared to what it was going to cost for the construction management of ASN. And then that would have also included an extra upcharge on the materials as well. So that kind of adds on to it also. So we have a little buffer to break even, but there is a little risk involved. We're being very flexible on the schedule, or at least I expect to be in the bid specifications as well, in the hopes that the construction contractor can do it more as fill-in work and potentially save there.
Thank you. Any questions for Taylor? Okay, looking for a motion to approve task order number 3 with MBN Engineering.
So moved.
Motion from Borgen, second from Ness. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move to item number 11, the award the bid for furnishing electric power transformers at MPS's northeast substation.
Well, it's going to be a little bit more northwest after the project. So, again, I've got Taylor up here, again, as Terry talked about and alluded to earlier with that, and we've talked about as well. You know, long lead time equipment, transformers and breakers are two of those pieces. So we started this process a few months ago with the ordering. So we've gotten to the point to where we're going to request award for bids, and I'll let Taylor take it from there.
Thank you, Travis. Yeah, so we released bid specs and opened them here at the beginning of August. We ended up receiving, I believe it was, is this the breakers one?
4.
Or-
Yep.
Sorry,
No, this is
mixed.
transformers.
Mine's mixed up. This is transformers. We received 4 qualified bids. We've reviewed them and spent most of the time looking at the Prolec GE Waukesha transformer. It's been determined that we're definitely in a seller's market when it comes to terms and conditions. But as far as pricing goes, it came in a lot lower under our engineer's estimate than expected. So there's a major positive from that side of things. The proposed lead time at this point, all of the bidders had difficulty guaranteeing a lead time at this point, but they were still entering them, and John and I are working through the review of those terms and conditions because we're developing the contractual package. So it might be noted that approval tonight would be contingent upon final legal approval as well. But we're working through those, hoping to try and reduce a little bit of risk from our end of things. But yeah, price comes in fine. The lead time is at this point looking good. One thing to note with this project is we have a key account that is fed from this future substation that runs a campaign starting in August until May of every single year, and then they perform maintenance during the months of June and July. So scheduling this future substation is really kind of built around that, and the longest lead times are for materials for that future substation are being taken to you guys for approval tonight. Really, once we have these nailed down, we can start planning and scheduling all of the other construction so that it works in seamlessly. With the projected arrival of these transformers, we should be able to receive them late in 2028 and then be able to energize it in 2029, subject to change.
Any questions?
Yeah, sorry. Any
For
questions?
Taylor. I got one for John. There's 2 of these bids didn't have the bid form signed. Are those considered
Oh, yeah.
non-responsive?
I thought it was
The highs too, but
Hitachi for this one. Or is that
Looks
the
like
bidders?
Hitachi and Delta Star.
Delta
did not.
Star.
We had a few minor kind of oddball things with some of the bids, but we didn't, because they weren't the lowest bidders, we didn't quite deem them important enough to disqualify them.
Okay.
And then some of the bid form didn't specifically call out certain things, so it was hard to keep it black and white. But as far as
inconsequential. Yeah, okay. I was just curious. Can I get a motion to award the bid for furnishing the 115 kilovolt breakers.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion from Lyseth, second from Borgen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 13, number 12, award bid for furnishing 115 breakers to MPS's northeast substation.
I'm just going to let Taylor go right ahead on this. We've already done the intro, so no reason to do it again.
Yeah, so the breakers now, these came in a little bit above, probably a little bit more than a little bit above the engineering estimates. Fortunately, we have the transformers on the same meeting tonight, and we can see that it was a net gain if you compare the two. Don't have a great explanation as to why, but like I said previously, we're definitely in a seller's market. These are scheduled to arrive, I believe it was the first quarter of 2028. One thing to kind of back with evidence that we're in a seller's market, part of the agreement and their terms and specs, our request was to require, I think it was approval drawings like 72 weeks or so before the construction of the breakers, and they're trying to push it to more like 50 weeks before the delivery date. So essentially, when we place this order, they're not even going to look at it and start working on it for a couple of years from now. So they're very backlogged. That's alluding back to what Terry was saying, how backlogged not just the projects are, but we're also dealing with backlogs on the materials because of everything else being built at the same time. And you're seeing it with the whole supply and demand price increases as well. One thing to note, out of these 6 breakers, we have been working with MRES to try and get cost recovery through SPP. We are pursuing a configuration at this substation that's a little bit above and beyond what is standard, and part of that has to do with our key account up there, and then it also has to do with the configurations that our existing substations don't really allow for some additional redundancy of having a third feed into town. We've deemed that by spending a little bit more now and being prepared for something like that is going to save us money in the long run than having to try and retrofit the substation or another substation in town to be able to handle that. And the benefit to the community would be tremendous as far as reliability goes. And then it also provides for some expansion up there in the future and makes it very, very simple in both design and construction. And we're already looking at trying to add something to that substation to increase capacity, similar to one of the projects that Terry referred to earlier in the form of a capacitor bank. Probably covered more than what you bargained for tonight, but are there any questions on the breakers at this point in time?
No questions. So thank you, Taylor.
Thanks.
I'll look for a motion to award the bid for the breakers.
Second.
Motion from Ness, second from Borgen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 13, review the preliminary 2026 budget timetable, appoint commission working groups, and set date for water and electric hearings.
All right. Well, it's budget season again. Happens every year about this time. So I got Mark Moylan. He's going to, our finance or admin and finance manager, is going to be talking about where we're at for budgets and what's going on. And we'll have to appoint a couple of working groups as well. I'll let you go ahead, Mark.
All right, thank you, Travis. Mark Moylan, and finance, admin and finance manager. Again, last item on the agenda. Glad to see everybody's still awake and ready to go. I had a 20-minute presentation, but the essence of time, I'm just going to cut it down to 1 or 2 greatest hits. So, again, 3 things Travis indicated we need to do: appoint 2 committees or working groups, and then also set the formal date for the annual rate hearing. Just a brief We're looking at all of the inputs this year over the next few months in terms of purchase power costs, which is our largest expense on the electric side. Over the next few months, Mark will be putting out chemical bids to get chemicals costs for next year. Hopefully the river hardness improves, but in the meantime, that's one of our larger costs on the water side. Preliminary indications from WAPA and MRAS is that purchase power costs will be going up on their books from either between 3 to 7% next year. So we'll build that into our rates. Chemical costs, we do not know yet how they're going to come in, but that'll again be a big driver. What we're looking at initially, as of today, based on just again very preliminary inputs, is expected electric rate increase between 0 and 4% for next year. I don't think it'll be 0, but we're looking somewhere in that range of 0 to 4%. We'll know more as the purchase power costs get finalized over the next few months. We'll probably be doing a rate study in 27, 28. It's been a couple years since we've had one. We've had a couple changes within our customer base over the last few years, so that'll need to be addressed. On the water side, we do have a rate study coming up that will be presented at the rate hearing night, but we'll be using that information to set our rates for next year. We're looking at between 3 to 7%. I guess it'll be more on the high end of that, depending on how these chemical costs come in. And we also, over the next few weeks, will be meeting with managers to look at our long-term capital planning. As you heard tonight, we have 4 or 5 items on here that also affect next year. MPS has a lot of significant projects currently underway, some other future large ones coming. So, you know, we've got to measure all that as we set the budget for the next few years, set the rates accordingly. So with that, I will stop and let you get down to the business of appointing 2 working groups, and then also formally set October 21st as the rate hearing date.
Okay, thank you, Mark. All right, we just start with one committee, or what do you
Yeah,
wanna
I
do?
can, yeah, so we need 2 committees. We need a budget working group or committee. We also need to have a human resource committee as well, too. We don't have any labor agreements that we have to negotiate this year, but with paid family medical leave, we might have to have some conversations on that. Part of the general manager review, which will be at the next meeting, is if, you know, the HR working group, if they want to make a change to the review process for next year, that also gets incorporated in as well. And there might be a couple other things that might come up, but we try to set those for the year. Again, those could change just based on people coming on or off the commission at the first of the year, but we try to at least cover ourselves at least through the end of the year, and then if we have to make adjustments in the spring, we do that, or beginning of the year, we do that as well.
And I did make a recommendation to Travis for both of these committees, but if there is a commissioner that would like to switch or do something different, we can certainly discuss that. But for the HR group, I recommended Ness, Lyseth, and Borgen. And because we have a missing...
Nope, I thought you had...
Oh, sorry.
I think it was Durand.
Oh, yeah, and I guess...
Yeah.
And Durand's still on the
yeah.
commission, right,
Yeah,
as of now?
As of right now.
Yeah, so yeah, sorry about that, Jeff. So it was Durand.
No, maybe it wasn't.
No, I didn't
It was
think so.
Borgen.
I just kept Durand
Borgen,
out because
yeah.
I knew she wasn't going to be there.
That's right,
As
yes.
far as the
So it
recommended.
was Ness, Lyseth, and Borgen, and then make an adjustment once we have a new commissioner.
Yep. And then the budget working group would be Baker, Paulson, and Borgen, and then Borgen would be removed and replaced with the new member or one of the existing. We can determine that at the time being. So.
Sounds good.
Okay. Do we need a motion on that, I assume, or?
I'm motioning. Let's do it.
If you want to do that, and then do both working groups and set the date all in one fell swoop,
Okay.
go right ahead.
That's my motion,
All right.
what he said.
Borgen made the motion. Do I have a second? Second. Ness seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Smart.
Agenda number 14, closed meeting. This meeting will now be closed for executive session as permitted by Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05, subdivision 3C, to discuss possible property transaction involving parcel number 10.032.100 in Clay County, Minnesota. We do, further action is not expected in open session. Therefore, we will adjourn upon conclusion of the executive session.
Do we need a motion to close? Think so. I'll move that we close
Okay.
for an executive session.
Borgen made the motion. Baker second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.